The story opens with a blonde girl asking Lily if she has settled into school life. Lily confirms that the lessons are interesting and the classmates are nice, but she freezes upon spotting Kamal, admiring his golden hair just like the rumors described. However, the blonde girl is distracted by the black-haired man walking beside the prince. When Lily dismisses him as a scary bodyguard, possibly named Glah, the girl instinctively realizes his true identity is Douglas. Recognizing the bodyguard from the world of her favorite game, she realizes that her favorite character is actually at this academy. Overcome with excitement, she runs toward them, but Lily quickly pulls her back and apologizes to Your Highness, saying her friend has a fever. The girl is Lobelia, a second-year student and the daughter of Marquess de Centra. Douglas cynically assumes Lobelia is feigning affection for him to get closer to Kamal, doubting a noblewoman would genuinely care for a third son. Kamal, on the other hand, finds her interesting, noting she is the first person not to be scared by his bodyguard's glare. Later, Lobelia sits on her bed at St. Hyena Academy while Lily quizzes her to ensure she is lucid. Lily sighs in relief, admitting she has never seen her friend behave so erratically. Lobelia apologizes, hiding the truth that she has regained memories of her past life. She realizes this world mirrors an Otome game she played in her previous life, confirming the man she saw earlier was indeed Prince Kamal. Lobelia reflects on the game's lore, noting that Kamal is one of the conqueror targets in Internal Cage. As the first in line to the throne, he is known for his bold personality, which is exactly why Douglas pledged his loyalty to him. Although the stoic bodyguard was never a romance option, his role as the prince's dinosaur sword and shield was so cool that Lobelia used to replay Kamal's route repeatedly just to watch him. Assuming the game's plot has nothing to do with her, she mentally cheers on the protagonist. However, a sudden realization strikes her. Lily asks if she is feeling unwell, causing Lobelia to panic internally as she identifies Lily as the protagonist of the game. She recalls that the game contains extreme content depending on the route, including confinement. Furthermore, the plot dictates that Lily will be mercilessly bullied by her villainous sister. Lobelia is horrified at the thought of her cute sister suffering, only to freeze when she realizes that she is the villainous sister in this narrative. When Lily expresses concern for her health, Lobelia dismisses it, claiming she just remembered something she needs to do. She opens a window to look outside, silently vowing that she will never bully Lily, whom she views as cheerful, kind, and a source of pride. She recalls the original game scenario. Lobelia falls in love with Kamal at first sight and aggressively pursues him. However, the prince ignores her advances and falls for Lily instead. Consumed by jealousy and pain, the original Lobelia would scream that she was the only one suitable for the prince while physically abusing her sobbing sister. Back in the present, Lobelia shakes her head, reasoning that she simply needs to avoid falling in love with Kamal to prevent the tragic future. Since she currently has no involvement with the prince, she decides to nip any misunderstandings in the bud. She approaches Lily, bluntly stating that she does not like His Highness at all. Lily is skeptical, asking if this sudden denial actually means she does like him. However, Lobelia clarifies that the one she actually likes is Douglas. Lily falls silent, then panics when she realizes that Lobelia was actually chasing the scary bodyguard earlier, not the prince. Shocked by the misunderstanding, Lily rushes out of the room. Left alone, Lobelia wonders if she said something strange. She thinks about why everyone finds Douglas so scary when, in the game, he had a cute side. She remembers a scene where Kamal teased Douglas for being awkward in social situations, even though he was very skilled at his job. She also recalls Douglas saying he keeps his bangs long to hide his eyes because he doesn't want to frighten women or children, a trait Lobelia finds very admirable. Lobelia recalls that Douglas earned a knighthood at a young age and, as the third son of an earl, could be a suitable match for her Marquess family. She quickly scolds herself for getting carried away, reminding herself that she has other important priorities. Although the rivalry over Kamal is likely averted, Lobelia knows she cannot rest yet. Lily is the type of protagonist who naturally wins people's trust and admiration without effort. Consequently, Lobelia vows to protect her sister from anyone who might take advantage of her. Walking through the academy, she notes that since Lily has just enrolled, the timeline is currently set before the game's official starting point. Lobelia overhears a group of boys admiring her beauty and calling her the center of attention. She turns toward them, acknowledging that while she is indeed a flashy and beautiful girl, receiving this kind of treatment feels uncomfortable now that she has regained the memories of her previous life. Suddenly, the attention shifts as other students notice Prince Kamal walking nearby, accompanied by Douglas. Lobelia observes the commotion, thinking that despite her own popularity, she still has it easier than the prince, who cannot go anywhere without being the topic of conversation. A group of girls attempts to greet Kamal, but Douglas instantly silences them with a terrifying death stare, causing them to shiver in fear. Lobelia smirks, noting that the bodyguard's defense leaves no openings, but she quickly refocuses on recalling the game's lore to protect Lily. She remembers that Kamal is typically perfect and uninterested in romance. But in the game, Lily's innocence eventually captivated him. While the normal route results in a classic, heartwarming story, Lobelia knows the real danger lies in the hidden route. She recalls a scene from that route where Lily reminds the prince that they had agreed to wait until graduation before pursuing a serious relationship. In response, a jealous Kamal misinterprets her intentions and demands her full attention, creating a tense moment between them. Reflecting on this memory, Lobelia admits that while a prince twisted by love was entertaining in a game, doing such things in reality is a crime. Her thoughts are interrupted by the realization that the next lesson is about to begin. Panic sets in as she recognizes that this specific class marks the start of a terrible flag for her character. Right on cue, a boy approaches her in the corridor. Alan Gladios, a childhood friend Lobelia hasn't seen in a while, walks toward her. He smiles, commenting that he wishes there were more dances so he could meet her more often. Lobelia smiles back, internally noting that his smooth words would likely give any other girl the wrong idea. She tries to brush off the compliment, calling him a flatterer, but Alan insists his feelings are genuine. He extends his hand, inviting her to dance. Hearing other girls whisper their jealousy nearby, Lobelia thinks she would happily let them take her place, but she has no choice but to accept. As the piano plays and they begin to move, she analyzes his true character. She knows Alan is actually a psychopath who grew up in a complicated family and trusts no one. According to the game lore, Lily eventually teaches him love, becoming the center of his world, while his duality, cruel to others but devoted to his lover, made Lobelia's heart flutter in her previous life. She remembers that his hidden route ends in a terrifying tragedy. Later, Lobelia stands alone, realizing with a pang of sadness that she has no friends. She reflects that despite being a loner nerd in her previous life, the isolation feels heavier now. Just then, Lily approaches her after afternoon classes to introduce a classmate named Lena. Lobelia greets the new girl politely. Lily proudly mentions that her friend is very good at drawing. However, Lobelia instantly recognizes Lena's true identity. This girl is actually Ligurio, a male prodigy and one of the game's capture targets. She recalls that due to his immense talent, Ligurio was frequently kidnapped as a child, forcing him to live in disguise by faking his name and gender. Lobelia remembers that his route involves a safe progression, where Lily eventually discovers his secret, leading to a pampering dynamic rather than tragedy. Relieved that nothing bad happens on the Ligurio route, she decides she can remove him from her danger list. Lily then cheerfully suggests that Lena should draw a picture of the two sisters next time, and the disguised boy agrees. Lena blushes slightly at the interaction, prompting Lobelia to gush over how cute she is. However, Lobelia quickly reassures Lily that she is still the cutest in the world and hugs her tightly. Observing Lena's expression, Lobelia wonders if the disguised boy is surprised to see sisters flirting so openly, but simply asks Lena to take care of Lily. Later, Lobelia reviews her notes, realizing that while she has written down everything she knows, she usually needs to meet specific characters to trigger more memories. She debates meeting the final character, Saul, a teacher at the academy. She hesitates because Saul is not an ordinary instructor. His true identity is a former assassin tasked with protecting and monitoring the royal students. Desperate to avoid a confrontation with an assassin, Lobelia considers alternative ways to recall his route. She remembers a pivotal game event involving a room with a broken lock where Lena and Saul get trapped. In that scenario, a suspicious substance is discovered in the room, which could cause unexpected effects. Lobelia decides to locate this room to recall the events and make sure Lily avoids any danger. While searching the corridors, she is startled by Kamal, who calls out to her and mentions he has been wanting to speak with her since their meeting in the courtyard. Lobelia tries to evade the conversation, claiming she isn't looking for anything but finds her path blocked by Douglas, who is glaring at her from behind. Feeling pinned, she agrees to wait when Kamal asks her to accompany him while he retrieves something. They enter a classroom, and Kamal explains he is collecting teaching materials for a medical class. Lobelia looks around and realizes the room feels suspiciously similar to the one with the broken lock from the game. She spots a small bottle among the materials and wonders if it is a dangerous chemical mentioned in the game. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them. Lobelia panics, confirming the lock is broken. Kamal asks Douglas if he can pick the lock, but the bodyguard admits he cannot, suggesting they might be able to use the chemicals in the room to break out. Fearing they might accidentally come into contact with the chemical, Lobelia quickly tries to hide the small bottle. However, when Kamal calls her name, she jolts, dropping the bottle. The glass shatters, spilling the liquid. Kamal urgently warns her not to touch the chemical and to hold her breath, recognizing it as a hazardous substance. Lobelia covers her mouth in horror, realizing that the game event meant for the protagonist is happening to her, the Villainess. Lobelia struggles to believe the shattered bottle truly contained an aphrodisiac. Reacting quickly, Kamal orders Douglas to break the window. The bodyguard grabs a small bench and smashes it through the glass to ensure ventilation. Kamal then uses a bag offered by Douglas to wipe up the spilled drug. When Douglas asks if the prince feels any effects, Kamal reminds him that poisons and aphrodisiacs rarely work on him. Douglas confirms he is also safe because he held his breath. Lobelia watches them in awe, impressed that the chaotic event from the game was completely handled without incident. She gazes at Douglas with admiration, thinking that her favorite character is truly amazing. However, when Kamal checks on her, Lobelia feels wobbly and collapses to the floor. The prince notes that she likely inhaled a small amount of the fumes. Douglas opens the door, reporting that he sensed someone outside, just as the lock disengaged. Finding this unsettling, Kamal decides they must leave immediately and instructs Douglas to take the girl to the infirmary. Douglas hesitates, prompting Kamal to ask if he plans to abandon a lady or force the prince to carry her instead. Relenting, Douglas apologizes for the intrusion and scoops Lobelia up into his arms. Blushing furiously, Lobelia is convinced that this Princess Carrie scenario must be a dream or a hallucination caused by the drug. Feeling her head spin, she leans slightly against his chest, thinking it all feels like a wonderful dream. When Douglas coughs awkwardly, she remembers that he's socially awkward around women, which makes the moment feel even more real. Encouraged by her dizzy state, she wraps her arms around him tightly and blurts out that she loves him. Douglas stiffens in surprise. Lobelia suddenly snaps back to reality, realizing she actually hugged him. She pulls away, horrified that she harassed him, and apologizes profusely. Douglas reassures her, attributing her confused memory and actions to the aphrodisiac's effects. Eventually, they reach the infirmary, where Douglas asks the nurse to open the door since his hands are full. The nurse hurries over, asking what happened. Douglas asks the nurse for permission to place the patient on the bed. Lobelia insists she can manage on her own and tells him not to trouble himself further, but Douglas firmly states that he is following Kamal's orders. Upon hearing that she inhaled a small amount of an aphrodisiac, the nurse immediately leaves to fetch someone capable of detoxifying it. Sitting on the bed, Lobelia thanks the bodyguard for carrying her. However, Douglas dismisses her gratitude, repeating that he is simply obeying the prince's command. Lobelia feels a pang of sadness, wishing he wouldn't emphasize the obligation so many times. Moments later, a man enters the infirmary. Lobelia freezes, instantly recognizing him as Sul, the former assassin and the conqueror target she wanted to avoid the most. Douglas introduces him as Balenka-sensei, the teacher in charge of human body and medicine classes. Sul checks her consciousness and asks for a report. Douglas explains that during a cleanup duty with Kamal, they were locked in a storage room with Lobelia, where an aphrodisiac was present. Sul carefully checks Lobelia's pulse and examines her condition professionally. While Douglas notes that the prince is currently disposing of the drug, Sul states he will conduct his own investigation into the substance. Lobelia tries to calm her breathing, reminding herself that even though he is a former assassin, he is currently just a teacher. After the examination, Sul smiles and concludes that the ventilation was sufficient as she shows no symptoms of the aphrodisiac. He tells her she can return to her dorm. Douglas mentions breaking the window for air, to which Sul replies that it couldn't be helped in an emergency. Lobelia thanks the teacher and leaves the infirmary. However, once she is alone in the corridor, her legs give out, and she slides down against a pillar, shivering. The encounter was terrifying, but it successfully triggered her memories of Sul's route in the game. She recalls that in the original story, Sul and Lily were forced into a compromising situation because of the aphrodisiac, even though they barely knew each other. Afterward, Sul sternly told Lily that it was an accident. He cited their respective positions as a Marquess's daughter and an academy teacher, instructing her to forget everything that happened. Lobelia remembers Lily obediently agreeing to his harsh request. Lobelia continues to recall the game's storyline, remembering that despite agreeing to stay away, Sul and Lily would still cross paths. Whenever Lobelia bullied her sister, the teacher would casually intervene to help. Eventually, Lily confronted him about his mixed signals, pointing out that although he claimed to be just a teacher, he kept saving her repeatedly. When Seoul told her to face reality, Lily deliberately took the aphrodisiac to force the situation, admitting that she was overwhelmed by her feelings for him. Reacting to her confession, Seoul removed his glasses, scolded her lightly, and acknowledged her emotions directly. In that route, Lobelia eventually plotted to have Lily put under house arrest in a remote area, but Sol saved her, and the two disappeared together. However, Lobelia knows the real danger lies in Sol's hidden route, which is as scary as Alan's. In this version, Sol takes extreme measures to protect Lily. For instance, if someone mistreated her, like a girl who threw mud at her, Sol would ensure they faced consequences through carefully planned interventions. As these accidents escalated, the game version of Lobelia confronted Lily, accusing her of orchestrating the attacks and threatening to report her to their father. Lily, realizing the truth, confronted Sol, who admitted he knew no other method to protect her. Instead of stopping him, Lily accepted his twisted devotion. Instead of opposing him, Lily reluctantly accepted Sol's extreme devotion. Sol pledged his unwavering loyalty as her protector, allowing Lily to take control of the Marquis house, while Lobelia was eliminated. She shudders, remembering that Sol was once an elite member of the Shadow of Sun, the king's direct espionage and assassination unit. Although he retired due to an injury to his dominant arm, he remains a lethal former assassin stationed at the academy to protect royal students. Concluding that he is too dangerous and unsuitable for a romantic partner, Lobelia resolves to avoid him completely to ensure her survival. She looks up and spots Douglas walking ahead. Realizing she didn't get a chance to thank him properly after leaving the infirmary, she considers approaching him. Suddenly, Douglas turns around, sensing a presence, but remains silent. Before Lobelia can react, Sol steps out from behind a pillar where he had been hiding his presence. He quietly asks why she is so frightened. Lobelia is shaken by his sudden appearance. Sol reveals that when he checked her pulse earlier, she was nervous the entire time. He deduces that she likely didn't experience anything traumatic in the storage room because she clearly doesn't fear Douglas. Sol presses her, asking that if her source of fear is a mere ordinary teacher like him, then what exactly does she know about his true nature? Lobelia spirals into panic, realizing Sol knows that she is aware of his true identity. Fearing this is the end, she frantically wonders how to survive. Observing her fear, Sol studies her expression and comments on how nervous she looks, noting that she seems very tense. Realizing she is checkmated, Lobelia stops acting and admits she knows he belonged to an assassination unit under the king's direct command. Sol confirms her statement and checks if she has shared this secret with anyone. When she shakes her head, he apologizes for scaring her, but declares her a godsend, admitting he has been looking for someone to help him. Lobelia is confused, but he explains that since she knows his identity, she must understand his duty to protect the key figures in the academy. Sol decides to forego interrogating her about her information source and instead offers a peaceful partnership. They shake hands, and Lobelia mentally celebrates avoiding death for the time being. As they walk outside, Sol explains that a strange aphrodisiac is being distributed within the academy, likely by a wealthy student selling it at a high price. He reveals that the storage room was a trap intended for the culprit, but Lobelia got caught in it instead. He dismisses her as a suspect, charmingly noting that a woman with her appearance has no need for such drugs. However, because the aphrodisiac has dangerous hallucinogenic effects, he needs to resolve the case quickly. He grips her shoulder, announcing that he will need her help to identify the culprit. Lobelia is nervous, realizing she will have to play a key role in the plan. Sol postpones the details until the next day. She heads to her dorm, resigned to skipping dinner since the cafeteria is likely closed. However, upon entering her room, she finds a tray of food and a letter waiting for her. The note is from Lily, expressing concern for her health and explaining that she asked the kitchen to prepare something easy to digest. Touched by her sister's kindness, Lobelia eats the dinner, grateful that Lily wasn't the one who ran into trouble with the assassin. The next morning, Lobelia is awoken by knocking on her door. Checking the clock and seeing it is only 6 a.m. on a day with no classes, she attempts to go back to sleep. Suddenly, Sol bursts in, scolding her for ignoring his knock. Lobelia screams at the sudden intrusion, but Sol quickly silences her. He reminds her that she is his helper and promises not to hurt her, agreeing to remove his hand only if she promises not to scream. Once released, she questions why he is visiting a girl's dorm at such an early hour. The teacher admits that going through the proper procedures to inform her was too troublesome, so he simply broke in. Getting straight to business, Sol outlines her mission. She must prevent Alan Gladios from returning to his dorm between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. He explains that he needs this window to investigate the boy's surroundings. Lobelia instantly realizes the implication. Sol suspects her childhood friend of distributing the aphrodisiacs. Horrified by the thought of Alan being a criminal, she attempts to ask if he is truly the culprit. However, Sol steps closer and quietly warns her not to pry into his investigation beyond her assigned task. Despite her fear, Lobelia realizes she cannot stay uninvolved. If Alan is guilty, he might use the drug on Lily. She steels herself and tells Sol that she will do it, but insists that she deserves to know the truth since it involves her sister's future and her own life. Sol observes her closely, explaining that untrained people usually display physical tics when lying, such as tensing up or rapid blinking. Satisfied that Lobelia is being honest, he snaps his fingers and agrees to a deal. If she succeeds in this mission, he will share the information he has. Before leaving, Sol hands her a small bottle, explaining it's a protective antidote in case she encounters the hazardous substance again. Lobelia realizes the mission is dangerous, but she tries to act brave. Sol makes an unsettling remark, then vanishes. Later, Lobelia stands hesitantly outside the boys' dorm. She feels awkward, realizing that standing outside the dorm on a holiday morning might look suspicious. Unsure of how to proceed without entering the building, she considers coming back later. Lobelia turns to leave, deciding to return later, but the door suddenly opens and Douglas steps out. He calls out, asking who is hiding there. Lobelia freezes, greeting him nervously while internally panicking. She worries that after yesterday's interaction under the influence of the aphrodisiac, her presence outside his dorm early in the morning makes her look like a stalker. Flustered, she stammers that she wasn't waiting for him specifically, though she claims she is glad for the chance to thank him. Douglas calmly approaches, reassuring her that he doesn't misunderstand the situation. Relieved, Lobelia notices his sword and asks if he is heading to training. When he confirms it is his daily routine, Lobelia mentally notes the schedule, but quickly scolds herself for having genuine stalker thoughts. Noticing his casual clothes and the way the morning sun highlights his black hair, she quietly admires how composed and handsome he looks. Douglas politely asks what brought her there, offering to call a student for her if needed. Touched by his kindness, Lobelia admits she is looking for Alan. Douglas acknowledges the request, confirming he saw Alan earlier, and goes back inside to fetch him. Moments later, Alan emerges, asking her what the matter is. As Lobelia apologizes for the sudden visit, Douglas departs for his training, though he casts a sharp side glance at the pair before leaving. With Alan successfully intercepted, Lobelia's mission officially begins.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.